All right, everybody, welcome to episode 28 of the Fantasy Timeline, a proud member of the Dynasty Addicts Podcast Network. Bill, week two with the Podcast Addicts Network. What's going on, man? How you doing? How you feeling?
Yeah, just got back to work this week, so I'm pretty winded. It's been 3 days of mediocre work ethic, and I'm ready for the weekend already.
Listen, I've made a career out of mediocre work ethic. It's okay. Some people can just survive and thrive with just mediocrity, and I'm one of those people. So I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear you're back at work. You know, a lot of people out there are trying to get back in there and maybe slowly getting back in there. And I think about that all the time. So cool. Like, again, man, we talk about the news, we talk about what's going on, but let's face it, dude, there ain't been nothing going on. The NFL voted on the Rooney Rule. That was probably the most exciting thing that happened, which is a good thing. They got to figure that out, and that's more of a philosophical, political, whatever type thing that we don't really get into. We're all about the fantasy and dynasty and how players do X, Y, and Z to make your team better. So gonna throw this up here real quick. Our man Dustin D Church 85 hashtag that network in the house. You're damn right. We're in the house. We're out here. We're getting ready to take over. We're gonna be everywhere and in all the ear holes sooner rather than later. So on that note, we let's go to what we saw on the timeline, my man.
Yeah, sounds good. We do have a guest that is having some internet issues, so hopefully, Two Drink joins us soon. But maybe we'll talk slower to give him a chance to catch up with us.
Well, I was DMing him earlier, and I told him he has to upgrade that 56K modem, and he said, "Nah, man, it's fine. Like, no worries." I was like, "All right, man." I mean, you got to make sure no one picks up the phone while you're online. It's a pain. It's a pain. And but yeah, so we'll talk about some things that we've seen around the timeline. We'll chat it up a little bit. Give our man Two Drink a chance to try to figure out his technical difficulties. But this first one here is from Dynasty _ football _ lover at Dynasty Football with only one L 7. I'm also a Dynasty football lover. My main man Bill is as well. So hey, we're with you, man. So he was on the clock at 105. He took Jonathan Taylor at 102. So he's asking, who should he take? He is in a rebuild with needs at running back and wide receiver. 12-team, 1 QB PPR. So his choices are CeeDee Lamb and DeAndre Swift. So, Bill, in this situation, man, are you going with DeAndre Swift, your man, your lion, or are you going with my man, the Cowboy, CeeDee Lamb?
I am going to go with CeeDee Lamb. I think if you're in a rebuild, the better option is to not take two running backs if you feel like you're in a rebuild. Since you already took a running back at 102, I think the wise choice would be to go with the wide receiver 1. And, just hope you hit on both of them, and you're going to end up with a stud running back and a wide receiver 1, hopefully for the next 8 years.
Are you, and this is a kind of a prevailing theory in the dynasty community. Are you someone that just goes best player available no matter what? Don't worry about team needs. we hear our main man Outhouse always say, you draft for value and you trade for need. Does that do you put any bearing into that as you read a question like this?
Not really. Not if I'm in a rebuild. I'm not worried about what my team needs, because you shouldn't be worried about that if you're in a rebuild. Because really, if you decide to just load up on one position, I mean, that's probably going to help your rebuild quicker than if you end up building a team that has every position covered. So, I mean, but as for like best player available, I mean, that's sometimes a little bit difficult to say what's the best player available. It's like, is it the best player available just whoever's next in line in ADP? Is it, do you know what player we don't know who's going to end up being better. So typically what I'm going to do is just go with, kind of how I want to build my teams. If I'm not going to contend this year, there is absolutely no reason for me to grab 2 running backs. Odds are they're both not going to hit. And I would just rather take something that I feel is going to be a little bit of a safer pick that can, build some value for my roster during my rebuild.
And I asked the question, and I totally agree with everything you just said. I would also go with CeeDee Lamb. I mean, just the way the question was worded and the way he presented it, this is a rebuild. CeeDee Lamb is going to be on your team, probably until your league blows up, So why not grab that man? And there he is.
Oh, shit.
There he is.
Sorry about that.
Hey, it's all good, brother.
It for the whole dang house. My bad.
So our main man 2 Drink, he got he got tech support on the line. He got everything fixed, and he's with us. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I flipped over on Twitter just to hear you talking shit about my 56K modem. That'd be an upgrade from what I have apparently. But no, I'm doing good. I much appreciate y'all for having me on.
Oh man, the pleasure is all ours. It's good to have you on. I swear, I think I've listened. I think today. Oh boy, the 56K cut out again. I think. What I was gonna say is, I think I listened to 2 or 3 podcasts that 2 Drink was on today. So, it's awesome to now be able to have him on ours. But
well, we had him on ours.
Yeah, we got him for 5 seconds. He's a very hard man to track down. But going back to CeeDee Lamb, yeah, that's a guy that's probably going to be on your team until you trade him or until your league blows up. So, yeah, that's the guy I'm going with. And sometimes rebuilds are about grabbing guys that you can flip quickly for a bigger and a better profit. Because I know I've said this, I know other people have said this. Even if we think the floor for CeeDee Lamb is replacing Randall Cobb's, 800 yards, and I think he would have more than Randall Cobb's 3 touchdowns. But let's just call it 805 in his first year. I mean, that hype train is just going to build. I mean, people are going to go, this is his floor now. And it's just, he's going to be on a train skyrocketing up. And if you wanted to, you could probably sell during the off season and probably make a little profit on it. So yeah, we're both going with CeeDee Lamb here, Mr. Dynasty Football Lover or Mrs. Dynasty Football Lover. I shouldn't make assumptions. So that's our one. Our man Dustin here at Dynasty Junkie FF from the Dynasty Junkies themselves has an interesting question here for 2020. Again, a lot of Lion-centric questions here. Matty Stafford or Captain Kirk Cousins? Bill, again, it's a Lions question. I'll let you go first. Who you got?
Well, I am biased, but I'm not biased. And so actually, I'm biased for both of these guys because Stafford plays for the Lions and Cousins played for Michigan State. So there we go. I have to go Stafford. I mean, when Stafford plays, you can see. I mean, you saw it last year. He was a top 5 points per game before he got hurt, and I mean, just that upside so huge compared to where I think Cousins is now. I do like Cousins this year, just actually in the next few years, just because you know he's going to be with the Vikings, and it's not like their defense is that good anymore. And I think a lot of people still think that they're going to be running the same system they did last year, but they lost their OC. He's in Cleveland now, and so and with the the defense not being as good, I think there's going to be more opportunities for him to actually pass, and he might be a sneaky ad in some of your in some of your leagues if you need a QB2. But Stafford is just, I mean, he was lighting it up beforehand, and I think that it's going to be the same thing this year, especially with DeAndre Swift there. I mean, it just kind of opens up the offense that much more. You have Hockenson another year in, Marvin Jones healthy. It's a pretty promising offense. I mean, their defense isn't anything to write home about either, so they're probably going to have to be passing as well. So I think that's probably a pretty easy decision for me. Stafford, when he's playing, is the best of those two by far.
Yeah, and this is one of those questions where I go, if you could guarantee me that both guys play 16 games, it's Matt Stafford, and I honestly don't think it's close. And don't get me wrong, I am probably higher on both of these guys than the dynasty community as a whole. I hear a lot of, I feel like Matt Stafford has been criminally underrated his entire career, probably. I don't think he ever has gotten the respect for the fantasy points that he puts up every year. The last couple of years, injury has been what has stopped him, and that's it. He's been able to put points on the board when he's out there and he's healthy. But unfortunately, no one can guarantee either guy will play 16 games. But I think Kirk Cousins has proven in his career that he is more likely to play 16 games. That would be the reason why I would take him. But, let's just say, Stafford plays 10 games. For those first 10 games, he's going to outscore Cousins. He's going to be the better fantasy QB. It's just, I can't predict that he'll play 16 games. Or I shouldn't say predict, but I can't feel good about him playing 16 games. So that's the only reason why I think I would go Cousins. But again, these, even in super flex leagues, these are guys that I feel like you can draft later than they should be drafted and get yourself good values on both of them. And hell, if you're telling me maybe you drafted one of the top, 3 or 4 guys in the first round, and then you kind of have Stafford and Cousin as your QB2 and QB3 in a super flex, that's not bad. I think you have 3 really good quarterbacks there, and I think you'd be ready to roll.
Yeah, I think the reason I lean Stafford is just because I think that the points for Cousins are easier to replace. And so that's kind of why, I'm going to go with the guy who's going to score more points most of the time, even if there is that concern of injury. It's kind of like the Dalvin Cook thing. Do you want Dalvin Cook or do you want I don't know, Fournette?
Right.
I'm going to take Dalvin Cook just because he can be a league winner. Whereas Fournette, I don't think he's going to get the receiving that he did last year and, that sort of thing. So it's one of those things where I just don't think that the ceiling's this high. So I'd rather go for the guy that's going to help me win as opposed to the guy that's going to stay consistent for me. It's just a different way of playing. And,
Mhm.
but if I feel comfortable with Stafford as my QB1, I don't feel comfortable with Cousins as my QB1.
I agree with that statement, and I also agree with the statement that Stafford has the higher floor. Now, obviously, everyone plays Superflex a little bit differently. I would hope that I don't put myself in a situation where I'm relying on either Matt Stafford or Kirk Cousins as my QB1 in a Superflex, and not because Stafford can't shoulder that load. It's just, again, of the injury concerns. But you're telling me that Matt Stafford is my QB2? Dude, I'm all about that in a Superflex league. And I think a lot of people would kind of poo-poo that idea and say, why would you want Matt Stafford as your QB2 in a Superflex? But like, just kind of go through his stat lines during the first 8 weeks of last season. I mean, he was slinging the ball, man. He was putting points up. So, yeah, and Bill, you made some really good points. It all depends on, whether what you're looking for in that range of quarterbacks. Are you looking for the higher upside play, or are you looking for the consistency? And that will dictate kind of where you go between Stafford and Cousins. But I think we can both agree that they're both good options, especially for where you're usually getting them in drafts. So we got that one down. Thank you, Dustin, for that question. It was a good little discussion and debate for Bill and I. So here's a good one from Leo P at Siga_FF. Pondering a couple late round rookie sleepers I like at wide receiver this draft season. That got me thinking of how often we gush and pound the table over late round wide receiver sleepers every spring in Dynasty just to watch them drop a turd on our wishful thinking. Which late round rookie wide receiver are you going to be wrong about in 2020? Very interesting question. A lot of good points because let's face it, I mean, we're not even going to play the exercise where we go back in time and talk about all the guys that we thought, that were drafted in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round of our rookie drafts that we thought we were going to be good that never panned out. But who's a guy that, either you think you'll be wrong about? And I actually think that's kind of a loaded question because if we thought we were going to be wrong about them, they wouldn't be guys that we're pounding the table for. I mean, we may eventually.
That question, I wrote that after.
Oh, you wrote that. Okay.
Yeah, he asked everything about that got him thinking about how often we gush and pound the table over late round wide receiver sleepers. So my question was, so which ones are we going to be wrong about in 2020?
So
you follow?
I hear you now. So
okay.
So I'll let you start then. Which guys, those late round guys, do you think we're going to be wrong about in 2020?
Well, I think that I haven't been grabbing a lot of wide receivers in the late rounds. I've been pretty much grabbing running backs and tight ends. Mm-hmm. So I'm even looking at ADP, and I mean, really the latest guy in ADP that I'm even grabbing is Antonio Gandy-Golden. I mean, I have a couple shares of Cephas, so he's probably the right answer for me. Just because, how often does a 5th round or 6th round quarter or whatever he was, wide receiver end up hitting? He's still got to compete with Amendola, Marvin Jones, Galladay. Plus there's the tight ends, and who knows how much he's actually going to get on the field. And so, I mean, he's the late round guy that I actually a 4th round guy that I actually have some on my team, but there's really no other wide receivers late that I've added. So that's my answer, just based on there's no other answer for me. So just I mean, I don't have a great answer for why he's going to fail. And I know he's your boy, but that's the only answer I have because that's the only wide receiver I'm taking late.
Bill, don't disrespect the great name of Quintez Cephas, all right? That man, he's going to ball out. He's going to be good. Don't put that evil on him, Bill. He's, again, very Lions-centric podcast we have going on. He's one of your boys. You should be pounding the table for him, not putting the evil on him. But
hey, you just talk shit about Stafford.
I don't think I really talk shit about Stafford.
And I don't think I really talk shit about Cephas.
Nah. and obviously, you know, we're joking around.
Sure.
Quintez Cephas, yeah, he's a guy I'm high on. A guy that he's kind of the late round wide receiver that I got on a lot of my teams. And I'm looking at ADP too, and I'm kind of looking at guys in the 40s. Let me drop back into the 30s, and yeah, I'm with you. Like Antonio Gandy Golden is, you know, the latest, and he's an end of the third round pick. He's the latest guy that I really was kind of like, I think he's going to be productive for fantasy. I mean, I took KJ Hill on a couple of teams, but yeah, this is tough for me because I'm kind of with you. As the later rounds came through, I was more looking at tight ends and running backs. I mean, Harrison Bryant, according to ADP here, or not ADP, but like rookie is, 46 in rookie drafts. I mean, he's a guy I picked up in a couple of places. Hunter Bryant is a guy I picked up in one or two places. Looking at running backs like Joshua Kelly and DJ Dallas are 39 and 40. Those are guys that I picked up a lot of. Michael Warren in deeper drafts I got a share or two of. So yeah, I guess I have to go with you on this one. I guess because he's the only guy in this range that I even have a few shares of is Cephas. But yeah, I mean, as far as the wide receivers go, yeah, I'll say Cephas too, because he's the only guy that really at that point in the draft I even was taking. I mean, I did grab a couple of shares of KJ Hill, but he's not a guy that I was really pounding the table for, so to speak. So I feel like that's a fifth round pick in a lot of places that I got that I was just kind of like, yeah, he had some hype, even in the actual NFL draft, he was supposed to go way higher than he actually did. He didn't end up going to the 7th. And he has an outside shot of being the wide receiver 3 there.
Yeah, that was interesting because like he seems to be the one getting more hype than the wide receiver they drafted in the 5th round, right? And he went in the 7th round. So that's an interesting one. Like, because I think he's overhyped in that regard. Why wouldn't Reed, their wide receiver from the 5th round, be the guy that people are going after? That seems like just because KJ Hill played for Ohio State, he's more the sexier name, but Reed is probably the guy to grab, I think. And that's something that I think maybe just the listeners and we can maybe use to maybe that's just some sort of inefficiency that, people are just going by name for him.
Yeah, and I think it's a name, and I'm not saying you heard it a lot during the pre-draft process, but it's a name that you did hear here and there. So I think we always go with, oh, right, he's back.
No
Tease.
Don't worry. We were just having a riveting KJ Hill discussion, so you came in right at the right time.
Oof, I don't know if I did.
So, to drink, what wide receiver that you're drafting late are you going to be wrong about?
Oh,
In
I
rookie
remember
draft.
seeing this
Rookie
one.
draft.
That I'm gonna be wrong about, huh?
I mean, that's pretty much all of your late round picks.
Oh
But
fuck! It's doing it again.
Uh-oh.
Van Jefferson.
Van Jefferson,
Okay.
he froze.
Okay.
All right, see you later.
We got him.
T-Drink.
We got him for Van Jefferson. All right. So since we got him for Van Jefferson, let's talk about Van Jefferson a little bit and why you and I think that he might be a bust.
Yeah, that's. I mean, he could be. We don't. I mean, I think he's a buy right now just based on his value. But I mean, he's coming in where maybe the Rams are thinking about running 12 instead of 11 like they were last year, so they're going to have 2 tight ends out there instead of 1. So maybe there will be just more 2 wide receiver sets, and so maybe he's not going to get the chance. I mean, Josh Reynolds isn't a chump, so who's to say that even if he is that he's going to be the 3rd wide receiver, he could be the 4th wide receiver. And so who knows? He might not get any playing time this year. And, we just all think, okay, he's going to be the next Cooper Kupp in a way, just because he was drafted in the 2nd round. He's kind of an older prospect. He's a good route runner. There's all of these things. But, I mean, just because they took him in the 2nd round doesn't mean anybody else was going to take him in the first 4 rounds, right? Like, that's just how they valued him. So I'm kind of like, I like him. I like his value in the rookie drafts. I just don't think that, sometimes we think about the guy's upside and kind of his draft capital, and we don't and we just automatically say, okay, he's going to be their number 3 wide receiver. Well, that might not be the case. He's obviously going to be more refined because his dad's a wide receivers coach in the NFL. But still, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. And it's not like the Rams get every one of their skill position draft picks correct. So we can't just automatically say it's going to work. And so, yeah, I mean, that's actually a decent selection because that's kind of zagging when everybody else is zigging in a way,
Yeah, and I mean, you made some really good points. Joseph Soto, 86 out here. He got his answer in just in time. He did. Yeah, Van Jefferson is a really interesting answer because it's really easy to make a case for him and it's really easy to make a case against him, which I mean, there are a handful of players you can do that for, but as a community, we usually make our case for or against the guy, and we stick pretty much to it unless things drastically change. And I think Van Jefferson is one of those few guys that the truthers will make the argument that it's the Rams offense. They were most successful when they had 3 wide receivers out there, even though, I mean, let's face it, Brandon Cooks and Van Jefferson do not even remotely play the same type of game. So to just kind of equate 3 wide receivers to 3 wide receivers, I think is a little misleading because they don't play similar games. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I wish I could say more, but Bill, I think you nailed down some real good points. And I think you nailed down most of the salient points on why Van Jefferson could be a bust. Were you surprised by my wordplay there? You kind of looked shocked there for a minute. Yeah. So, you and I, we went Quintez Cephas to drink for his 5-second cameo. Went with Van Jefferson. I think those are 2 guys that we could be walking into the 2021 draft and looking at our rosters and kind of going, why the hell did we think that these guys were going to be good?
I thought that when we paid that $50 for his cameo, it was supposed to be 30 seconds.
Listen, you run the finances of the fantasy timeline.
I'm the booking agent.
Yeah, so you
That's my bad.
You have to handle that. I mean, we got 25
spelled out.
We got 25 more seconds in the tank, so
that's what I always say.
So that was a good one. I like that one. and we do kind of have to think along those lines when we are when we're drafting guys. We almost have to make counter arguments to ourselves to make sure that we're not just going off of what other people say or hype, or we have to kind of look at the guy and figure out why we think he's going to be successful, but then we also have to kind of make the counter argument and maybe figure out why he's not going to be successful, and then reconcile the two in our heads and go with it. So got a good one here from Cole Odell at FFRook_. This is a little philosophical book hole question. Should owners be allowed to keep guys like Tua and Judy on their taxi squad to tank? Or if they are obviously superior, should they be required to be on the normal roster? So, very interesting question. This is a question that I hear not only asked this time of year, but especially during the season, when it's obvious that certain teams this is their strategy, this is what they're planning on doing. And I see answers all over the board. So, Bill, I don't think this is anything you and I have ever talked about, so this will be a good conversation. What's your opinion on it?
Yes, they should be allowed. If it was a taxi squad, if it wasn't a taxi squad, it would just be something on you need to have specific rules to prevent anything from happening in that regard. So I think if you want to keep your best rookies on there, you can. I mean, if the league doesn't like it, they write a rule in the bylaws, or they, basically remove taxi squads and just increase the roster size. And then it's just a tanking issue. But if you have a taxi squad, I think that you should be able to keep whatever player you want on there if there's no rules against it.
And I totally 100% agree. I mean, so I saw a lot of the responses to this tweet, and people were like, well, this is why I don't like taxi squads, and this is why taxi squads suck. And honestly, it doesn't really matter if you have a 3 or a 5. I'm in a league where we have a 10-man taxi squad. Or if you just expand the roster that many spots, I mean, it doesn't really matter. I mean, yes, there's some small differences to that taxi squads bring. But I mean, this is also a hard one because there are some leagues that have anti-tanking rules written into the bylaws.
Sure.
And obviously you got to respect those if that's the league that you're playing in. But who's to say, and I'm just going to throw out an example here. So Tua is in and he's playing now. He's the starter for the Miami Dolphins. He's going to be starting every week. If the Dolphins have a 3-week stretch where they're just playing elite defenses, and let's just say you have Gardner Minshew on that same team, and he has a 3-week span where he's playing some of the worst defenses in the league, I don't want someone questioning my decision to bench Tua for a guy like Gardner Minshew just because they think Tua should start. Like, that's not how I'm reading the information in front of me, even if I'm not trying to tank. But if I am trying to tank, then yeah, obviously I'm going to start who I think is the inferior player. But it's hard to say, like, these are the guys that should play. I mean, yes, obviously, you have your Christian McCaffreys, you have your DeAndre Hopkins. Like, those guys are going to play every week. That's obvious. But Tua hasn't done anything in the league. And I think Tua is going to be good. So this isn't a Tua bashing session. But we have not seen Tua do a damn thing in the league yet. We have no idea what he's going to be, how good he's going to be. And for you to say that you think I should play him just because you think he's going to be good, I mean, I don't think that's right. I think, this is what I love about Dynasty, and this is what drew me to Dynasty, is that I can build my team any way I want to build my team. I can make lineup decisions based on what I think maybe is not only going to be good for this week, but is going to be good for me a year down the road. It's like the real NFL. And, no one tells, the Cincinnati Bengals last year, no one tells them, Andy Dalton is obviously the better player. You can't bench him and start Ryan Finley. Like, they wanted to see what they had in the guy, so they sat Andy Dalton. It's the same thing in Dynasty. So, yeah, I mean, I don't I don't think that, they should be required to be on their bench or played or not played. I think unless there are rules in the bylaws, every team should be able to run their team the way they want to.
Yep, I 100% agree. And it's some people. I get it. Like I get it. Like if you're also trying to tank and you see somebody doing that, it pisses you off because you're like, damn it, they're out tanking me. But like I've seen that, and it's interesting, especially as you get further down in the season when it gets closer to determining playoff spots and that sort of thing. That's when people start to get a little antsy about it, just because there might be a bunch of injuries and somebody's sitting there with Tua and let's say DeAndre Swift or something sitting on their taxi, and they don't have anybody to play, so they have to go pick somebody off waivers that's going to suck, as opposed to playing some guy that are going to get a decent amount of touches. And yeah, I mean, maybe you don't like that, but that's the rules in the league, or there's no rule in the league preventing it. So that's the issue. And if that's a concern of yours, then you need to bring it up to the league so that you guys can vote on something to change it. And maybe you're the only one that thinks that way, and tough luck. But maybe everybody agrees with you, and then the rules are set up in a way that somebody can't quote unquote abuse taxi. And I get it. It's not good when you see it that way, and I don't like seeing that either. But I mean, it is what it is, and I hate to use that phrase, but that's the case.
No, you're absolutely right. It is what it is, and this is why. And I think you would agree, because you commission a lot of leagues. This is why it's important to either ask for the league bylaws, or if you're given the league bylaws, to actually read them. And don't get me wrong, some people have novels as their league bylaws, but it's because they've done it for such a long period of time. They've seen all the situations, they've seen all the loopholes, they've seen the way people get around certain rules, and they've kind of countered all that. And that's why the league bylaws are so large. And it's the same thing for, your scoring settings in your league. How many times have we been in drafts, Bill, where someone's like, oh, this is tight end premium? You're in the 12th round. I didn't know that. Well, dude, it says it in the scoring settings. Like, this is why you need to read these things before you get into a league. Because if you're someone who feels that there should be anti-tanking rules in a league, that's fine. That's an opinion you're allowed to have. But then read the bylaws, and if you don't see them in there, DM the commish, call the commish, text the commish, whatever, and say, hey, man, I don't see any anti-tanking rules in here. Is that something you have? Did I miss it? Is it something that you don't have in your leagues? And your commish can let you know, yeah, I have those in my league. They're on page 3. Or they can say, no, man, I don't really believe in anti-tanking rules. And then you can make a decision to either stay in that league or not, so that's just my 2 cents on it.
Yep, I agree. And I mean, honestly, that's the first thing I do when I agree to join a league is I go and I look at everything. I look at the scoring. I look at, first I go to league scoring so I can get a feel for what's happening there. Then I go to the league settings, and that shows you lineups, it shows you the rosters, it shows you all that. And then typically at the bottom is where the bylaws are, at least on MFL. And, I just want to have a feel for the league. Like, the last thing I want to do is, I don't want, as a commissioner, somebody complaining midway through the startup, or B, midway through the season. And that's happened more than once. I mean, it happens literally all the time, honestly. It just blows my mind. So, I mean, I get it. You get excited. You want to join a league, but take the 20 minutes it's going to take you to kind of scan it. At least you don't have to read every word. Most of the bylaws are set up pretty decently where you can kind of see the main key points, and then you can just go read those areas if that's what's important to you. I read through them. I'm one of those guys. Like, I'm always a person that over prepares, and I want to understand what I'm getting into. Although there was one league where I read it, thought that they just keyed it in wrong, and I didn't ask. And then midway through the season, or when the season started, the way waivers were running was different than what I expected it to be, and I didn't ask the question. So whose fault there is that? It's mine, because I didn't ask the question, and I even saw the waiver thing, and there's nobody to blame but myself. So then I'm the asshole at the end of the year because I'm like, yeah, this isn't really what I was looking to do. I'm sorry. Fortunately it was a good team that I left, but it's I don't like being that guy where all of a sudden I'm bouncing after year one because it's not something that I enjoyed. And all it would have done was me asking that question, and it would save a headache for the commissioner, and it would have saved me looking like a jerk leaving.
Yeah, and this is one of these situations where it's do as I say, not as I do, because I'm one of the worst people when it comes to reading bylaws and looking in depth into scoring settings. But that's normally because I am joining leagues with people that I know, people that I respect, people that I like. So I'm more into it because, Bill, if you ask me to join a league, I'm like, oh, this is one of Bill's leagues, I'm going to join it. Like, I'm not really going to look into like, oh, okay, is this scoring settings that I like? Is it, are the bylaws exactly the way I want them to be? Like, Bill's my boy. If he invites me into a league, I'm jumping in. And so that's how a lot of my leagues are structured now, is it's with people that I know, people that I like playing with, people that I respect and kind of, talk to on Twitter or talk to on GroupMe, whatever the case may be. So, but especially if you're joining a league with people you don't know, I see a lot of people on Twitter all the time. Hey man, I'm looking for a league. Anyone have an opening spot? You'll see, 3 or 4 people. Oh yeah, I have an opening in my league. You want to take it? If you don't know those people, that's the time that you really have to look at the league bylaws. You have to look at the scoring setting and make sure it's everything that you want it to be, because, if not, you're going to run into situations like this where you're trying to figure out if somebody should be allowed to tank or not, and it may or may not have been in the league bylaws. So, Cole, good question. Got us thinking, got us debating, and got Bill and I agreeing again, which is always a good thing. So, this is from Matt Harrison at Explosive Output. Dynasty trade, good old trade question. So we got one side, which is Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Cooks, or we have the other side, which is Zeke Elliott and DK Metcalf. So, Bill,
you go first, Josh.
Oh, I get to go first?
Yes.
Is it because there's a cowboy in it?
No, I just want to hear what you have to say.
All right, cool. So I'm gonna go with the second side here, side B, as it's written down. Zeke Elliott and DK Metcalf. I think Zeke and Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey is the best player in this trade, so let's get that out of the way before anything else happens. But I think the difference between Christian McCaffrey and Zeke is more than made up for with the difference between DK Metcalf and Brandon Cooks. And don't get me wrong, if Brandon Cooks shakes the concussion issues that he's had, then this is totally going to flip. But I am worried about that with Cooks. He's just been Ruth knows. Zeke RB1, just 2020, and that's fine. But no, I mean, as much as I would love for that to happen, the way that offense is constructed right now, I don't see a path to Zeke being RB1 unless there are major injuries or that offense runs completely differently than the way I think it's going to run. But yeah, I go with Zeke and DK here. I think just that gulf between DK and Brandon Cooks makes up for the small difference between Zeke and CMC. What says you, Bill? What says you?
I am on the other side of this. I just think that CMC is such a huge advantage. I mean, it's just so like him alone. I mean, that's kind of the way I look at it. Like, do I want CMC or do I want DK and Zeke?
Oh,
And
don't you put that evil out there. Come on, Bill.
And I would rather have CMC just because I feel like I can replace DK with another wide receiver that's going to score similar points and I can get reasonably cheap. And I just feel like, okay, even if Ruth is right, which I don't believe Ruth is correct here, but I mean, if Zeke is the RB1, I mean, CMC's right there, but that's going to be this year. And like, I don't feel like I think that having CMC on my team gives me a way better chance of winning the championship. And like, could I get Marvin Jones? I'm just throwing him out there, but like, it's one of those older players for cheap that can score similarly to DK. And so I just want the guy that's going to give me the best chance of outscoring everybody else. And I mean, how many leagues were won last year with just because they had CMC? And he covered so many other blemishes for so many teams because he just outscored everybody by so much. Now, there is risk there because we don't know how the system's going to be run in Carolina with the new coaching staff. But I think that they know what they have with him, and I think they are going to utilize him in a lot of different ways and get the ball in his hands a lot. They may not run him as much, but he's still going to get his 100 and whatever targets. And I mean, that alone is just such a huge advantage. So I mean, it's just the CMC thing. It's not an anti-Zeke thing. It's not an anti-DK. It's just CMC is just so dominant right now, and it's hard to pass him up.
Yeah, I agree with you. CMC is dominant. I mean, I don't think anyone who plays this game or watches NFL football can argue against that. I think, first of all, to your point about not knowing how the offense is going to be run, valid point. But I also think with Joe Brady in town, I mean, we kind of saw what he did with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who, I mean, I know everybody loves him, but he ain't CMC, and he turned out a really productive running back in CEH. So I think the offense is going to be run similarly to how it was last year, just because even if you look at what the Panthers have done in the offseason between free agency and the draft, they focus mostly on the defensive side of the ball. Their only major player on offense was Robbie Anderson, which I think just makes things murky for all the wide receivers, but I don't think it really does anything to change CMC's outlook. Now, I will say, I think it's going to be very hard for CMC to repeat what he did last year, just because last year was was insane. I mean, the dude was just running every play, catching every ball. I mean, he was the Carolina offense, and I think that is going to be something that I think Joe Brady is going to try to spread the ball out more. They do have 3 wide receivers, so I think that drops them a little bit. But again, I think the same can be said about Zeke.
Yeah.
I don't want to sit here and make it sound like, I'm going to say this about one guy and then not. I mean, because I think they're both in kind of similar situations where all of a sudden you have 3 guys that could legit get targets, a I think Dak is a better quarterback, but I don't think Teddy Bridgewater is a guy who won't be able to get those players the ball. So
Yeah, I just think their defense is so terrible too. You know what I mean? Like they're gonna
Very
be
true.
bad this year, so they're gonna be throwing the ball all game long, and so that's gonna help McCaffrey as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like let's say this is non PPR. Well, then the answer is different, right? Like then
Yeah.
it's Zeke and DK because DK is probably going to be a touchdown guy, and Zeke's, the difference in the receiving isn't quite as big as it would be in like a PPR. So, I mean, depending on what the scoring is, that's going to be a probably something that pushes me one way or the other as well. But yeah, and I agree. I don't expect CMC to do what he did last year, but he scored I think 470 points or some crazy amount. But what if he scores 400? I mean, 400 is still a ludicrous amount.
Right.
And, he's literally just entering his prime now. So it's just, I think it's just a safer decision for me. I'm not sure. I think Zeke's already, maybe going this way a little bit, or he's at least the, what people believe his value is. So I'm kind of playing the value game as well. And, but yeah, I mean, I'm not faulting anybody either way. And the results at the time I copied it was 51-49. So there was a lot of people that, want both sides. And, that's a good trade for, it's probably a trade you can find in every league then, because you're going to, you're going to see half the people wanting to make that.
And agreed. And let's face it. I mean, you and I split on it too. So if we had these four players, it's probably a trade that we could make. Both of us would be happy with. You'd be stoked to have CMC on your squad. Yep. I would be stoked to have Zeke and DK on my squad, and we would both walk away from that trade happy. And at the end of the day, that is what it's really all about. It's about, obviously you want to make your team better. That should always be your first priority. But if you can execute a trade and both people walk away from it happy and feeling like they quote unquote won the trade, then you've probably made a good trade. You probably made a trade that both sides can be proud of. So that was a good one. Got Bill and I debating a little bit. Bill, obviously wrong, but that's okay. One of us have to be. So
yeah, it won't be the first time.
Ain't that the truth, man? I've been wrong about so much. So I threw this on here, Bill. I want to get your opinion on it because this was a very popular sentiment a couple of months ago, and I never understood it. We may have chatted about this briefly, but it was so long ago. I don't remember your take on it. But this is from Greg O at Grego Lando, and his question is, what is Bryce Love's trade value in a 10-team, 34-man roster with 4 taxi squad, full PPR? So Bryce Love's trade value. So he's got 4 choices here: a 2023rd, a 2024th, a 2025th/cut, or a hold. So you have Bryce Love. Or no, let's do it the other way. You want to obtain Bryce Love. What are you offering for him, if anything?
Okay, so this is a 10-team league, so I'm going to kind of think this out a little bit. Okay, am I looking at the 2020 rookie draft class? Am I trading anybody I get in the 3rd round for Bryce Love? And the answer is no. So now I'm in the 4th round, and that's probably where I'm willing, if I want him, that's where I'm probably going to need to trade him. So that's pick 37 to 48. So you're basically, I mean, I'm going to say the 4th to 5th round is kind of where we're at there. I'm probably in that 5th round, to be honest, which would be pick 41 to 50.
Yep.
So that's where I would be. I'm not really sure. Bryce Love's a flyer. I mean, that's pretty much all he is. There's so many running backs there. I mean, he was drafted, I think, in the 4th round last year.
Mm-hmm.
And they've added a ton of other backs. So that's my biggest concern. That is he even going to get a chance? And I mean, he's going to get a chance, obviously, but is he going to have the opportunity to win a higher spot? You know, I mean, I think they're going to give Geis every opportunity under the sun. He's not a great receiver, I don't think. Love. I don't think he caught too much when he was at Stanford. So he's kind of limiting himself in what his chances are. So, I mean, that's probably the max I'm paying is a 5th round in a 10-team league. And I mean, honestly, there's just so many other guys that are very similar to him that I would just prefer to maybe pick somebody off the waivers that might have equal shot of making it to my roster.
Yeah, and this is kind of like, it's almost like, would I trade my scratch off ticket for your scratch off ticket? Like, I mean, if you were someone who was high on Bryce Love when he came out last year, okay, like, try to throw your 4th or your 5th at the guy who has it because maybe there's somebody he likes. But I mean, there's so much competition in Washington for running back snaps. Like, I don't see where Bryce Love fits in. I mean, they have Geis. They still have AP. Who did they draft? The wide receiver that it's being converted into a running back now. Crap. I'm already forgetting 2020 guys. This ain't good.
The dude from Memphis.
Yeah. Gibson.
Yep. Antonio Gibson.
Thank you. That's 3 guys right there and Bryce Love. Like, there are a lot of guys there. I don't see a path where Bryce Love fits in and gets meaningful production, unless there's just a slew of injuries at the running back position for them. And people 2 months ago were like, "Get yourself Bryce Love, get him where you can." And I just kind of shook my head and I was like, "Why? Why am I doing this?" Like,
yeah, I saw a guy traded 2/3 for him, 20/23 before the draft for him, and I'm like, just imagine like he gave up maybe like Antonio Gandy Gandy Golden, and like I don't know, McFarland or something like that. You know what I mean? Like you could have gotten McFarland and Darrington Evans with those 2 picks,
right?
For Love, So,
so you know what, Bill? Let's play my favorite game. I'm just going to run through a couple guys from every round, and you tell me if you're taking Guy or Bryce Love. And I have a feeling that Guy, I say, is going to win most of these. So
I mean, you're gonna have to get to Eno Benjamin in the rookie draft for me to say that I'll take Love over him.
You would take Love over Eno Benjamin?
I mean, that's where I would have to start thinking about it. But every other running back I would take that's an ADP above him, I would take over him.
Well, but we're not even going to go running back because remember, these are picks. So like we always say, picks can be anything, even a boat. Van Jefferson, we just talked about him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm taking Van. I mean, he's a 2nd round rookie pick or 2nd round in NFL draft. So yeah, I'm taking him for sure.
31 on DLF rookie ADP right now. Adam Troutman or Bryce Love.
I mean, I'm taking Troutman just because his upside's so much higher because of the situation, and they traded up for him, and I mean, I know that the potential hit's not there, so you're gonna have to hold him. So I mean, that is a consideration. Do you want to take Love and then go, all right, he didn't make the team, I can cut him. You save yourself a roster spot. I mean, I get it, but I would rather have Troutman.
Agreed, by the way, on both of those. So let's drop down. You said Eno Benjamin. All right, that's where you start thinking. So let's go a little bit below Eno Benjamin. Let's try this again. DJ Dallas or Bryce Love?
Oh, it's Dallas for sure.
Without a doubt.
He has no competition. Like, I mean, we don't think that Chris Carson, we're not even certain he's healthy yet. And, what's his name, blew his knee out, and it was pretty bad. So he's not necessarily coming back immediately. Who am I thinking? What's his name?
Rashad Penny.
Thank you.
Don't worry, I couldn't remember Antonio Gibson 5 minutes ago, so I'm
that's
with
cool.
you. No, and I mean, according to all reports out of Seattle, it looks like Chris Carson is on track. Rashad Penny is not.
Yeah, I mean the reports
So-
are that way, but we just still don't know, right?
Yeah.
And and plus, like, just the fact that Seattle gives the best player the opportunity to play.
Yep. Agreed. So, we're at DJ Dallas. Here's right after DJ Dallas, Joshua Kelly or Bryce Love.
Kelly by a mile.
Kelly. Yeah. I mean, so now I'm going to drop a little bit because we're still in this territory where it's like not even close. Hey, here you go. My boy. Quintez Cephas or Bryce Love?
I mean, that's when you got to start talking about, because you're talking about wide receiver that's drafted late in the NFL draft.
Mhm.
And so that's where I kind of go, yeah, what are the odds of this wide receiver getting drafted that late hitting? And it's pretty low. So, I mean, that's where I kind of go, if I want to take the flyer on a running back that showed really well in college
Mhm.
before he got hurt, that's when I start rolling the dice on somebody like him.
Okay.
I mean, I don't necessarily know what the answer is for me. I mean, I have my bias as a Lions fan and that sort of thing, but that's just looking at situationally. That's where I'm okay. I'm okay making that decision because it's a sound decision to take a running back that was a 4th-round pick last year that came in injured. So maybe he was underdrafted because of his injury and people knew he was going to have to sit out a year. But still, somebody took him in the 4th round. You know what I mean? He could have been a 3rd-round pick last year if he wasn't hurt, maybe. So I'm willing to roll the dice on a player like that. And if he hits, great. If he doesn't, at least I know I can just dump him immediately.
So that's Cephas coming in at 47. So in a team, I can't talk today.
In a 10-team league,
that's a late 4th. I mean, or a mid 4th, really, but mid to late 4th. So that's where you start thinking. And even I mean, I am looking at Cephas just because he looks like he has an easier path to being the wide receiver 3 on a team that, I mean, we just talked about Stafford and how electric he was the first 8 weeks of the season. That's going to throw the ball a lot, as opposed to trying to figure out a way that Bryce Love can get into a situation where he can get meaningful, playing time. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the wide receiver 3 for the Lions is, wide receiver, 24 on the year. But I'm just saying that I can see a way that Quintez Cephas has a game or two where he has meaningful fantasy numbers in 2020, and I don't see that barring injuries, which I never predict for Washington. So
sure. I mean, I could see him making the roster, the 53 man. Because basically, really, the only guys I think are 100% on the team are Gibson and Geis. Those are the only 2 guys that I can confidently say are definitely going to make the team. Probably Adrian Peterson, and then maybe J.D. McKissick because he's different than the other guys. He's more of a receiving back.
Yeah.
So he would have to, maybe Peterson all of a sudden just lost everything and he takes, or I don't know if he's a kick returner. Maybe that's a way he gets on the team.
Yeah.
And, can stick around that way. And that could be a way that he's at least stays on a team so that then if there are injuries, he's there to jump into that role. But yeah, I mean, I get it. It's something that, like, you make that decision and you're probably going to know during the preseason whether he needs to stay on your roster or not. And whereas, like, sometimes that's valuable, you can get rid of that guy, throw somebody else on there that might have a chance. A few years ago, I was doing that and I was adding Austin Eckler because nobody knew who the hell he was.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, I ended up getting that because I had somebody I was willing to cut. Right. And that's the biggest issue, right? Like, sometimes those players are more important than having a bunch of guys that you have to wait and see what's going to happen before cutting them. Those are the worst cuts, right? When you're sitting there looking at those rosters and you're like, man, I don't want to cut this guy. But sometimes you just got to make that decision. And I'd just rather have those guys that I feel like, okay, I feel good about cutting him now, you know?
No, exactly. I agree with you 100%. So, yeah, I mean, I think I voted and I said, fifth round cut. I mean, and I like making these deals during the draft. Sometimes you're at a spot in the draft and you don't know who your pick is going to be. You don't like kind of the guys in that area. And you reach out and you say, hey, I'll trade this pick. And someone might say, oh, you have, this is 401. And you say, hey, I don't want, 406 and, a fourth next year. Just give me a guy off your bench. Maybe that's when you go, okay, I don't like this fourth round pick. I don't like this fifth round pick. Give me Bryce Love instead of getting some kind of pick package for it.
Sure.
Or even, if there's a Washington fan in your league or a Stanford fan in your league or someone who you've heard talk highly about Bryce Love, maybe he's a throw-in another trade to maybe sweeten the pot a little bit and get a guy that you really like. But yeah, I mean, I know when I heard kind of the roar a few months ago, I didn't understand it because I'm like, what does Bryce Love give you? And it's kind of how I look at players, either when I draft them or I'm trying to acquire them in trades or a startup. I go, why can this guy be valuable for my team? And I just never saw it with Bryce Love. And I think he was great in college. This isn't like like the guy never had any talent. He's just had injuries. He's been slow to recover. It scares me. So that's why I would be out. But hope we helped out, Grego. And we're gonna move on to Ruth Dewey. What a good question here. Where does Anthony Miller fall in rookie picks? And Bill, if you were going to trade a pick for Anthony Miller, what would that pick be?
So for like a 2020 pick, I would probably be in the early, probably late second, early third. I mean, I've loved Anthony Miller. He was like one of my guys when getting drafted, but talking to Ethan Turner, like he's super concerned about his shoulder. His shoulder is messed up, and the issue is like he's gonna be playing hurt, for a lot of the season, just because that shoulder is never gonna be super structurally sound, and it's always gonna be popping out, and so that's just a concern now. And he's a little bit older now. I mean, I think he's got to be 25 or 26. I mean, he looked really good at the end of the season last year, and that's promising, but I mean, I would rather roll the dice on. It's such a deep draft. I mean, if you're getting like Brandon Ayuk at the, towards the end of the second in some drafts, and I would rather maybe go that route, a first round rookie wide receiver, than Anthony Miller, who I really like. But just when I talked to Ethan Turner, and he was really, I think he might even mention that on our pod, about Anthony Miller and his concern for him. And I mean, that's really it. I mean, I really liked him. He was like my guy. Like every year when I'm watching college, there's a few guys I just type their names out on a Excel spreadsheet and, to keep an eye on throughout the draft process. And when I actually caught the Memphis, was that where he played? Memphis, I think. Memphis versus UCLA when Josh Rosen was playing against them. And they were talking about how good Josh Rosen was in that game. And the guy that just kept catching my eye was Anthony Miller. He was just incredible. So, like, I really, really was keeping an eye on him. And, I mean, but I can't go. I mean, when you get into that Anthony Gibson or Antonio Gibson range, like, that's where I kind of feel comfortable adding Anthony Miller. But I mean, I can't do anything probably higher than like the 210,
Yeah, and I'll admit this is one of my weaknesses. I'm terrible at converting players in the league to draft picks. So I looked at the DLF rookie ADP, and I'm with you. In a
And
12-team league, I'm not looking at um, I'm not looking at making a trade for a pick until like 209 at the earliest,
okay.
and that's in Superflex. That's the earliest, and
Yeah,
I'm
and
not.
I should have said that. That's what mine is too, because Superflex is like where my brain always is. So that's
Me
always
too.
what I'm basing it off of.
Me too. Yeah. So 209 is the earliest, and I can't even guarantee that. Depending on the way the draft broke down, I'm not gonna lie. Any draft that I have a late second in, I'm trying to move up for my man Brian Edwards anyway. So I've been probably about 60 to 70% successful in that. So usually I don't end up with that pick anyway. I don't end up keeping that pick. But yeah, that's the earliest I would look at it, and that's the range, according to DLF ADP, and a lot of the drafts I've been in as well is where you get into that Jordan Love, Jalen Hurts area, which I'm not a huge fan of either guy. Jordan Love is just based on what I saw, and um, Jalen Hurts' landing spot. So yeah, so I think we both agree on that. We're looking at that late second Ruth area. So on that note, Bill, we don't have anything else in the chamber, brother. I think we've scanned the timeline pretty well. We've hopefully busted out some knowledge that people can use, and obviously, that's what we're here for, man. We're here to try to help as much as we can, and give what we got. And I think we did it. I think we gave what we got. So, thank you to everybody in the chat this week. Man, we had Ruth Dewey, going at it. We had Joseph Soto going at it. I mean, J Mike popped in for a little bit and said, "What's up?" Just, it was awesome. We had a lot of people that were in and out. John Bauer, I saw him a couple times. It was awesome. We appreciate it, man. It makes the pod great. We love seeing the questions come through the chat, and it gives us some things to talk about that maybe we weren't even looking at. If you're watching this on YouTube or on Periscope, remember to subscribe. Remember to hit the bell. I don't know if you could do that on Periscope. I'm actually not really good at that, but I know on YouTube, hit the subscribe, hit the bell. Remember, it's the Dynasty Addicts Podcast Network on YouTube. So search it. We always put links out. So if you don't know where to find it, you can always click a link. We'll put a link in the description of this show, so you can get to it and either rewatch us or maybe watch us because you couldn't do it this week. And if you're listening to the podcast, thank you again. We appreciate that too. Every little bit helps. If you're doing it in podcast form, just remember to subscribe, rate, and review. It helps us out, and we appreciate the feedback. On that note, Bill, we're out of here.
Late.